All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to One-on-One with Campus Advocacy Network, and GSC, Gender and Sexuality Center. My name is Moises Villada. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I am so excited to welcome you today. This is our monthly conversation with a community member of the UIC campus to share a little bit of who they are, their journey, and get to know them a little bit more. So welcome. If you're joining us, you can find us on the CAN Facebook page, on the GSC Facebook page. Ada, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Moises. How are you? Gosh, I'm so happy. Every time I see you, I'm happy. One-on-one with Ken and GSC, it's almost a year, right? We started the show in the beginning of last year. So by April, May, it will be the 1 year mark. So it's amazing how we got it started, and it's growing, and hopefully we'll continue this event. This interview with the community members. Essentially, it's really about going beyond our work role and responsibilities and get to know each other a little bit better, dig deep into and really anchor ourselves with vulnerability so we can build trust and community. And today, I'm so happy that our guest, special guest, Dr. Karen Su. I know Karen for quite a while, and she has told stories on my shows, multiple shows. Karen teaches at UIC Global Asian Studies, directs UIC AANAPISI initiative. I made sure I asked how to pronounce that, and also helped with Queer Asian American Archive, which I was very honored to be a part as well. Karen, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. It's great to be invited, and I'm looking forward to the conversation with both of you. I really love the idea behind this program because when I think back in my own life, I basically think I needed to talk to a lot more people about a lot more things. And it's helpful. It's helpful to hear just different perspectives and hear about different experiences. So thank you for inviting.
Yeah, absolutely. Be free, be brave, be courageous. Yes, Moises.
Yeah, so let's dive in. You know, our time will go by pretty fast. So we just wanted to always start off the show with asking folks who participate to tell us a little bit about how you were like as a student, and this could be in college, this could be earlier, whatever resonates for you that you maybe want to share with our audience. How were you like as a student, whatever that means for you?
Wow. Okay. So a couple things come to mind. One, as a student in my entire life, like starting from nursery school.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the one description of me as a student is I did not talk. I was quiet. I was a very quiet student. And, you know, part of that was that I grew up as a daughter of immigrants, and I spoke Mandarin Chinese at home as my first language, and I was dropped off to nursery school without knowing English. So I think it kind of was a bumpy start. Like I think I got a lot of messages and felt like, oh, well, I don't have any conscious memory of this, but I think back and think, wow, I didn't understand what was going on. I probably felt very much like I was out of my element, or I was not, fitting in some way. No one at the time, and maybe I don't know if I would have been able to understand it as a 3-4-year-old, but like, it was okay that I didn't speak English. But I think it was hard to start off school that way. And so that became a theme throughout my life, even into graduate school, that I did not talk in school, and the teachers were always telling my parents, like, she doesn't talk. And my mom's like, oh, well, you know, she's screaming at home. I don't see the problem. So that's one thing in terms of just school life. It was really, I was very quiet. I did not talk in school, which is then, you know, a little ironic that now I am teaching in the university. And I remember before I started teaching, I thought, oh my gosh, I never talked as a student. How am I going to go in the classroom and talk? And what I noticed at that point was, well, you know, the way that society is structured and the way that power dynamics operate, it's like students are taught to give authority to the teacher. So, you know, when I started teaching, I was like, oh, they're all waiting for me to talk. I totally have the space to talk. And it was not as hard as I thought it would be. But I think also it was the first time that I felt people were giving me that space and waiting to hear what I had to say, which was not something I experienced a lot of as a student, you know, growing up.
I do have a quick question. You know, earlier when you talk about language, right, not being able to speak a language, let's dig deep a little bit about that. How is it related to your own sense of belonging and place in educational institution? And we can narrow it to, for example, in college. How is it about that feeling of, gosh, I don't belong here? And the other thing is really about a cultural difference. It's to say in Asian culture, we wait for our turns, right, to speak, particularly as women. But here is that you have to be very aggressive in carving out your own space. So it's a very different ways to communicate. Can you talk a little bit about that, belonging and the different communication styles?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, I mean, I do think that there was a sense of, oh, I shouldn't say anything unless I have something valuable to contribute. And, I viewed that as a very Asian thing, versus maybe the idea in American culture very much is like, you put yourself out there, you got to, get out and, express yourself. And that was always very hard. And I don't even know if those two cultural differences are really that true in terms of, the different cultures, but that's how I experienced it, probably mainly because it was really difficult for me to feel a sense of belonging. I did not ever learn, any Asian American history as a young student up until high school. And when and we still didn't have classes in high school, but I had some other classmates who were from Japanese American families where they had a sense of some history from their families in a way that I did not as a Chinese American, immigrant family. Like I remember, and so my point about that is I did not feel that I belonged to the US in any way because I didn't have that history or background to connect myself. I felt pretty like, oh, I'm just here by accident. And I viewed kind of my parents coming to the US as a quote unquote accident, which it's not at all. I mean, it's connected to deep histories of war and, imperialism, and like, none of that is accidental, but it wasn't available to me in terms of how to make sense of it as a kid. I just thought, oh, we happen to be here and we're Chinese. And I did not know what that meant at all till high school, when my friends actually said, you know what, there are people called Asian Americans and you are one of them. And I was like, what does that mean? And I think that was really critical. And I guess I bring that up because I feel very lucky that I got that perspective starting in high school. So by the time I got to college, I think I was very much, I guess, looking for a space where we could understand, what does it mean to be Asian in the US? What is our connection to other people of color communities? And I think that made a big difference. I started feeling like, oh, that could offer me a sense of, if it's not belonging, like a sense of purpose here in the US in terms of who is important to connect with, what communities are important to be a part of, to understand what is happening in the US historically. So at that time, and I was in college a long time ago.
We're the same generation, right?
I don't know, Ada. I might be older than you, Ada.
No, you're not.
Well, it was in the 80s. And I actually went to a women's college. And at the time, students there were pushing for what was called the third world course requirement, just saying, before people graduate, they should take at least one course that focuses, on non-Eurocentric curriculum. And so that was happening. And I think, having been in higher ed really since then, I still see that as a need. And, here at UIC, our students are pushing for an ethnic studies requirement, interdisciplinary requirement that includes ethnic studies and gender women's studies. And, it's literally many decades later, and this is still needed. So I'm really grateful to see our students organizing around that need. But I also feel like, wow, it's been decades and decades to get that in higher ed in the US. So
Karen, yeah. And you talk about witnessing these moments that are kind of helping shape your experience. And I'm kind of thinking, did you find your voice? And if so, how did you end up developing it?
Wow.
Or what comes up for you as I ask that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what I have to say about, going to college and actually going to graduate school after that is that those were really important places where I learned to do a lot of things, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned about communities, and learn how to recognize, different oppressive structures in our society that were really eye-opening for me and really important for me to even begin to figure out, where do I belong in that? So in college, I was a student leader for the Asian Students Association. I learned a lot from taking on that role. I was an English major, and I think that I learned a lot of things that I still use today in what I do in my job, right? So it was a very formative time. But if I answer that question, like, did I find my voice? I would say all of that was really important. I was doing important things, but I was not a person in college who could really honestly be true to myself and be authentic with myself, in that I shied away from doing the things I most wanted to do. Like I did a lot of things that were important that I learned about and that I was good at and that I'm still good at, but I wasn't listening to myself in terms of like the core self. What did I really want to do with my life? And so in that way, I feel like I did a lot, but I wasn't really living the life I wanted to live, and really didn't figure that out till, I don't know, my 40s. So if college students are listening right now, I think my main point is like, and I don't want to go back and say, oh my gosh, Karen, what was wrong with you? Why didn't you, do that? Because I think that's just part of the journey. Like I wasn't ready to do it, but I can definitely go back and see, these certain moments when I started realizing I really wanted to do a certain thing. So I keep saying that, and it's really art. Like I really wanted to do art, but I chickened out, and I began to put it on the back burner and only do art when everything else was like done and I had a spare moment. Then I would do art, and then find out each time I did it that, wow, I really like this. I really like doing this. I really want to do this more. But then I would, I went on to graduate school, not in art, but I remember that summer before going thinking, should I maybe rethink that and go to art school? And then it was like, no. I'm just gonna stay on my like conventional path that felt a little safer. And I ignored what I really wanted to do. And I guess, I can bring this up too. Like then I went to grad school. I figured out that I was studying Asian literature, and I figured out, oh my gosh, there is such a thing as Asian American literature. And then I did transfer to another graduate school to study Asian American literature and, multicultural literature in the US. But I was still kind of living a little bit of a shadow life, like not paying attention to important things. So like in my 30s at this point, I realized I had a huge crush on a woman, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I was in my 30s. And so I just decided, it's too scary. I'm just gonna keep ignoring it. So, so it took a long time to keep coming up against that. Like it kept coming up and saying, there's things I need to pay attention to that I'm ignoring, and I need to just kind of face the fear and figure it out. But it was scary.
This is so interesting. Earlier, before the show, we're talking about teaching, right? I remember probably last week or 2 weeks ago, I was in a group with Asian American women. It's a sorority group. I do that every Tuesday. And I literally was experiencing this transference that I was seeing myself through them. And I remember I was saying things that I wish I had said, right? I not necessarily what I would say. What I would say is I was watching them, but at the same time I was watching them, I was watching myself, and I was saying things that I wish I had said. And so I find that teaching has this transference effect. And having looked at all your experiences, and now teaching younger generations of Asian Americans, how do you encourage them to develop their voice, or how do you encourage them to pursue their passion right, to pursue their aspirations? Because I get asked that questions a lot. What do I do between parental expectations and my own sense of authenticity? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've had that conversation with many of our students. A lot of our students come to UIC with the goal of being pre-med and to become a doctor. You know, I started out college as pre-med as well. And my parents, though, were not pressuring me to do pre-med or, you know, to be a doctor. But I know a lot of parents do have that goal for our students, and it's really challenging to navigate. I think I've seen many students navigate it really well. And it does seem like once they decide and realize that it's just not something they want to do, they figure out how to change their major, have the conversation with their parents and with others around them. And I think the thing that's that seems the scariest is, you know, that maybe the parents will disapprove. And for myself, I felt very much like, oh, I was always the good kid. I'm the oldest daughter. And it's really important in my family for me to like do what's expected and do a good job and be responsible. And I thought of myself that way. And it was hard to really think about, oh, but if there's something I want to do, it might be okay to pursue it. And I think that's the permission I want to encourage everyone to take, no matter, you know, if you're still in college or if you're older, but to give yourself permission to really do what you want to do or be the person you really want to be. I think for too long in my life, I was scared to be who I am. Because I also, you know, going back to the nursery school experience, I think my first experience outside of the home was I was not the right kind of person. And then I tried to keep like, you know, making up for that. And it's like, no, I get to just be who I am and make that okay. And, but that was hard to do. So, you know, I see a lot of students who are very much into the arts and creativity, but they want to have like a practical major and then figure out if they can continue doing, you know, whatever art they enjoy doing kind of on the side. And, you know, I think that's one way to do it, and that's okay. I think one thing I didn't figure out was, even if I'm not doing it as a career, how do I keep it in my life? And it's something really important for me just to get through the day. So I'm glad I figured that out. And on the other hand, I want to encourage people who really have a love for the arts to take that risk and go for it. I was listening to a podcast with Margaret Cho, and I don't remember which podcast it was, but I loved what Margaret Cho shared because, and I was like, oh my God, that's me. She was talking about how there's many older Asian Americans who come into the arts because they couldn't, you know, they either had family pressures or own, you know, individual insecurities that kept them from pursuing the arts at an earlier age. And so there's many older, you know, and I'll claim this identity, late bloomer Asian Americans who are in the arts. And it was just this moment of recognition. I was like, oh my God, Margaret Cho is describing a phenomenon that I fit into that demographic. Like, and I think what was validating about hearing that was that, oh, I'm not the only one. And other people are trying to do this. But she also pointed out that, it's hard going. It's hard going to start something in your, later life. And so if you are younger right now and know you have that passion and want to do it, like, go for it now. And, if it doesn't work out in the ways that you want it to work out later, you can always figure that out. But I don't think it's worth not doing it because you haven't gotten the support you need. And so I think, at the beginning of this interview, I was like, I just did not talk to enough people. I kept everything to myself. I had these strange ideas in my head that I made decisions on that were completely not really connected to reality. So I wish I had talked to people and found out, like, oh, if I'm interested in this, what are different things that people can do? Is it possible to make a living with? If not, then what do you do? How do you keep what you really want to do in your life viable in whatever way? Instead of just like, oh, I'll live my life, but ignore the thing that's most important to me.
I love that. And Karen, you have brought up so many wonderful things around identity, around social structure, around your voice, that internal spirit, creativity. I mean, just really rich elements that we're all kind of navigating. So I hope that whomever's watching can connect to that. But I think my last question in the last 4 minutes that we have is, what's bringing you joy now? We're in complicated times, but I'm kind of thinking, and we want to leave it on a positive note too, but what's coming up for you that brings you joy at this moment? Maybe I think that's the last question I'll ask.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for asking that. I mean, I think it's really hard in the pandemic. And I'm very lucky that, my job at UIC lets me continue working and working remotely. And I see how difficult it is for a lot of people in our communities. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I really couldn't do anything. Like, I was just, it was hard to even get through the work, of the day. And I had a family member who was kind of touch and go at the beginning. Thank God he is fine. And so one of the things that I started doing in December was, one of my friends set up a weekly writing hour, and I joined. And then after that 1 hour, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to make sure I do 1 hour a day of either writing or art. And some days it turns into 3 hours or 4 hours. Some days it might be half an hour. But that really does make me feel better every day, to be able to face, all of the other things that I am doing for work or involved in with community or with my family. So I feel like, oh, I was able to focus on the thing that's most important to me in my life for me, and finally prioritize that. And it seems like it's a lot of time, but now that I've started doing it every day, it doesn't feel like a lot of time. It feels completely possible to do this. And I look back and think, why have I not been doing this for every day before? But again, like, I'm happy that I was able to start it now and that I'm able to do it right now. And last week I made 2 art pieces for a toddler board book that I'm working on. And it was just amazingly fun to do every part of it, like every detail of the way the pencils feel when I'm coloring, or the paintbrush. And I just realized, like, yes, you know, I remember that I really, really, really enjoy doing art. Even just ripping the tape off to mark a margin, it felt good to do. So I'm happy to be doing it. And I'm very lucky I get to do that.
Thank you so much, Karen. Can you believe it? It's 1 o'clock. We're at the end. Yes, we're at the end. I want to say something and to close out the show. You know, one thing I have told younger generations, high school students a year ago, I say, whatever you choose to do now is not forever, right? Your career doesn't have to be the only one. You can have multiple careers. The only thing that you need to have is courage. When things need to change, you need to have the courage to take actions to make changes, right? So you can have live multiple, embark on multiple paths, and there are different ways to live your life. And the traditional way is not the only way. Gosh, 1 o'clock, we're done. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that too?
Please do.
It's like, I think also, if you're feeling scared and you need the courage, you don't have to do it alone. Like, really just talk to people and say, this is what I'm going through. And you'll be surprised. I was surprised by how many people could really offer support, just a resource to know that, hey, they support me in trying to be brave and do it, you know, trying to have the courage and to do it. I didn't just do it alone. And I think that's really important. So, yeah.
Very good. Moises, how do you feel?
I'm
work
just
buddy.
So moved and really honored to be able to witness and hear your stories and and I know you already from being a colleague, but it's just so wonderful to also learn more, and just grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my honor for you to invite me and ask these great questions and have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable, honest, and share with us your experiences. And I really appreciate it. And everyone, one-on-one with Ken and GSC is a monthly show. So we'll see you in April, the second Thursday of the month. And we want to thank Karen, Dr. Karen Su, again for being here. Bye, everybody. Bye, Moises.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for watching.
Bye.